Hello, Matt Wilson here with this weekend's video, and I'm gonna take out a big, gonna take a big bite this weekend. Do Bob Dylan. Now I have wrestled with how to do Dylan. I'm a huge Dylan fan, and rather than just do his whole career, I'm just gonna do the '60s and the '70s because it's I'm trying to keep these videos down. I noticed that some of the longer ones don't get as many views. So I do have a lot of stuff to show you though. I don't think I'm going too far out on a limb to say that the 60s and the 70s were his two greatest decades. So I know we'll see what the success of this video is in case I want to do a part 2 and do, 80s, 90s, 2000s, whatever. Okay, so I'm going to start. I want to use a couple of things here as my primary source. This is the, complete Columbia albums CD box, which I'll tell you a little story about this. I got this online, and I don't remember, whether I got it on eBay or Discogs or Amazon or whatever, but I got it used from a New York record store, and it came to me. I'll show you what it looks like. It's all the CDs. It came to me missing Blood on the Tracks. So I contacted the guy that I bought it from, and he apologized, and he said, and I don't remember what I asked for, $10 off, whatever, because of course I already had Blood on the Tracks elsewhere. And he said, the guy told me a little anecdote that this was Al Kooper's personal CD box set that he had brought in and traded in or whatever, sold it, I don't remember. So can't get rid of it now. So I'm going to use that. These are all of the stereo mixes, and it doesn't. It stops at here's a side track. It stops with Tempest. So it was done some time ago. It doesn't go up to. It doesn't have any of the American songbook albums of the 2010s. It doesn't have Rough and Rowdy Ways, whatever. But it'll do you, for a one-stop purchase. And I'm going to use, because you guys know I like mono, the mono CD box. All right, which of course just goes up through John Wesley Harding. So let's start. Bob Dylan, 1962. This is his first album. Look at that cherub-faced young boy. He doesn't write too many songs on here. This is just pretty much a traditional folk album from the early 60s, in that it's mostly covers of older material. There are a couple of things on here that he wrote. Songs with Woody is real good. He also has a version of House of the Rising Sun, which, depending upon which animal you believe, was either the source of their take on that song or not. I think Eric Burdon says it was not. So here you go. It's a good album. I don't know if it's essential. It's better than Simon and Garfunkel's first album, which came out 2 years later. But nothing that you have to have. I have something else I wanted to show you guys too. Oh well. Oh yeah. This came out, I don't know, 20 odd years ago. These are SACDs, some in 5.1 of Dylan's catalog. None of the 5.1 mixes are all that good though. So yeah, I would not buy this if you're just looking for, if you want 5.1 and you want to, actually it's Atmos, and you want a good sounding Bob Dylan album in surround, Time Out of Mind. Get that one. It's beyond the context of this video, so we're not going to be discussing that album, but it is a classic. That's what I recommend from Bob in surrounds. Okay, so anyways, back to the 60s. Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. Second LP, 1963. Monumental leap forward in creativity, in songwriting. Folks, I don't have the superlatives for this record. This could be the finest clutch of songs he ever assembled for an album. It's amazing to me that the guy who made this album also made this album the next year. These songs are genius. Oh my God. I'm making this video at night, and you guys will know that I can barely read this stuff during the day, but with this light. Blowing in the Wind, that's an all-time 60s classic. I mean, again, that's a poem set to music. Girl from the North Country, another fantastic song. God, I want to be able to see these albums better. I want to be able to see these songs better than I can. Here's the stereo mix. No, it's the same thing with the stereo mix. Let me see if I can read the SACD better. If all of them merely reproduce the LP cover, I'm not going to be able to. Oh yeah, I can see it a little better. This is the SACD. Okay. Yeah, Masters of War, masterpiece. Down the Highway, Bob Dylan's Blues, good songs. Hard Rains Are Gonna Fall. No one was writing stuff like that in 1963. Guys, there is a when you're talking about Bob Dylan's songwriting and the effect that his songwriting had on songwriters globally, there's a before Dylan and there's an after Dylan. All right, no one thought to put poetry to song lyrics, to popular song lyrics like this before this album. All right, and that's just side one. Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. Another great song, very straightforward in the lyrics. Four Seasons had a hit with that, but they didn't call themselves that. Bob Dylan's Dream, Oxford Town, Talking World War III Blues, Karina, Honey, Just Allow Me One More Chance, and I Shall Be Free. Side two, not quite as impressive as side one, but still, you're looking at nothing less than the greatest songwriter on earth at this point. Guys, this is 1963, you know, John and Paul were still just writing love songs, all right? Brian Wilson was writing about surf. You know, Mick and Keith were just dicking around with you know, African-American music. There was no one like this at the time, all right? So you need to pick that one up if you haven't already. All right, next one. I'm using the mono box here. This is Times They Are Changing. It's got kind of a rough cover there, you know, to rough meaning it's not smooth. This full-on protest album, this 1964. Gosh, I should just, again, I can barely read these titles, but let me try. No, I mean, Times They Are Changing is a classic. Here's the, no, that's the studio version. And of course, it's not available on the SACD. So anyways, this is a really good album too. It's not quite as, you know, genuflected to as Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, or probably even another side of Bob Dylan, which would be the first singer-songwriter type album in the 70s sense of that word, which would come out later in the year. But this is another masterpiece. Again, he's so far ahead of everybody else here that even if you're a bit, you know, not as enthralled with his acoustic troubadour protest stuff, you have to be in awe of his talent. Sorry, guys. I really can't read the songs on here. With God on Our Side, I know is on here. A lot of bands covered that. Boots of Spanish Leather. But the title track, Times They Are Changing, is every bit the classic that Blowing in the Wind was. You know, I mean, it was an instant standard. Everybody covered it. And look, I mean, again, look how young he is. All right, so that's 1964. Another side of Bob Dylan, as I've already said, this could be the first singer-songwriter type album. And here's what I mean by that. Okay, so he was, you know, totally, everyone was calling him the voice of this generation by this point, and he never liked that. He never liked all that weight on his shoulders, the cross he had to bear, whatnot. Never wanted to be the voice of his generation. So as soon as he was given that mantle, he turned his back on it and said, I don't want to be a protest singer. I don't want to be fit into that category. I'm just going to write songs about my life. So that's why it's called Another Side of Bob Dylan. Again, this is the mono disc. It's got the lyrics. I hope that they're the lyrics. Again, I can't see them. Many songs on here were covered by other artists. Folk rock bands would practically, fill their repertoire with songs from this album in the upcoming years. All I Want to Do, the Byrds did that and had a hit with it, and Sonny and Cher. God, I wish I could see this, but I can't. Chimes at Midnight is on here. Anyways, singer-songwriter type albums of the James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, Jackson Browne ilk in the 70s. You can say this begat all of that. All right? Another Side of Bob Dylan, another classic. Well, as if he weren't just in the business of confounding people, this album sure did it. This is bringing it all back home. It's half electric. It's half acoustic. To say that he scandalized the folk community by rocking out would be an understatement. I mean, you could make a whole movie out of just that one story. He recently appeared at the Newport Folk Festival with the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, and Mike Bloomfield blasting away on electric guitar, and shocked everybody. One of the stories is that Pete Seeger tried to unplug the band or something like that. Then they toured in '66, which I'll get to in a second, with the Hawks. Hawks were the band, also blasted out electric rock music, and it really rocked hard, folks. Anyways, back to this album. Side 1 is it's all electric. Subterranean Homesick Blues was a top 40 hit. Now, he had hits with his songs that other artists had performed before this. I think Subterranean Homesick Blues was his first hit under his own name. I actually can read this. She Belongs to Me, great. Ricky Nelson did a great version of that. Maggie's Farm, again, that's a standard. So many people have covered that. Love Minus Zero, No Limit, wonderful. Outlaw Blues is a great deep cut. On the Road Again, ditto. Bob Dylan's 115th Dream. He's making music that rocks harder than the Beatles, or probably even the Stones at this point in 1965. Side 2 was all acoustic numbers, 4 of them, all of them classics. Mr. Tambourine Man, I mean, that song pretty much begins folk rock when the Byrds did it this same year. Gates of Eden is a masterpiece. It's All Right, Mom, Only Bleeding is a masterpiece. And It's All Over Now, Baby Blue, which actually Them with Van Morrison do my favorite version of that song. But again, this album, guys, the contemporary Beatles album was the Help soundtrack. Just to show you, again, how far ahead of John and Paul Bob Dylan was at this time. All right? It's like a college grad competing against high school kids. Yeah, that's not a bad analogy. All right? So, if this didn't begin folk rock, well, then, Mr. Tambourine Man album by the Byrds certainly did. But I think this album came out first. All right. He goes full-on electric with Highway 61 Revisited, released later on that year. Every song on here is electric except for the last cut. This is a complete masterpiece. Every song is a killer. I wouldn't trade anything. I mean, even the out-of-tune guitars on Queen Jane, approximately, I wouldn't change. We could go over the songs, but it's like pointless. I mean, you can't have a decent 60s LP collection without having this. And again, the concurrent Beatles album at the end of 65 was Rubber Soul, another big leap for them. But I don't know if Rubber Soul is a better album than Highway 62. I mean, it depends upon the mood, you know. I mean, there was no one in his league at this time, folks. I can't stress that enough. Like a Rolling Stone is considered to be his definitive song. I mean, that song went to number 2. And, you know, it's all about this kind of rich society girl who's fallen from grace, and they never really say how, you know, what she did. And it's just verse after verse of him kind of sneering at her. He wrote a lot of songs at this time in the mid-60s about, you know, rich girls and society girls and debutantes and that kind of stuff. So just Like a Rolling Stone is probably just the most famous one. Tombstone Blues is another classic. He's writing in a real surrealistic way by this point. These are not protest songs, although he said at one point later on in the 60s, all my songs are protest songs, but it's hard to take what he says, you know, seriously sometimes. Takes a lot to laugh, takes a trade to cry. Great deep cut from Buick 6, ditto. The Ballad of a Thin Man is another, I mean, I could do a whole show on just dissecting these songs. That one is based on the Ray Charles 50s Atlantic number, I believe, To My Soul, same kind of music. This one is kind of sneering at a guy he calls Mr. Jones, who's just like a, you know, I don't know if he's middle-aged, but it's like a guy in the mid-60s who's just like a square and doesn't get the, you know, the current crop of young kids. Anytime you hear Mr. Jones referenced in a song, it's probably referencing this number. I talked about Queen Jane approximately. Oh, guys, my eyes are shot. I can't see the rest. But you know, Highway 61 Revisited, the title track is on there. Let's see what else is on there by memory. It's that one about going down to Juarez, Mexico, just like Tom Thumb's Blues, another masterpiece. And what is the last one? I should know that one. Yeah, Desolation Row, which goes on for over 10 minutes, and it's another surrealist look at, you know, the demimonde from the lower depths of the counterculture. He would write a lot about that kind of stuff. A masterpiece, folks. Here's an old DCC Steve Hoffman version. All right, cruising. Blonde on Blonde. This is my favorite Bob Dylan album. 1966 double LP, came out before Frank Zappa's Freak Out. So if you hear Zappa fans tell you that Freak Out came first, it did not. Blonde on Blonde did. I don't think this is the original inner sleeve, because Claudia Cardinale had a picture on here, which I think she didn't like, so he had to remove it. But anyways, one thing I'll tell you about Blonde on Blonde, any CD you get of this album is a remix if it's in stereo. This mono mix from the mono box set is the only 1966 LP mix that's unfutzed with that you can get on CD. So reason alone to get this box. All right, it's another masterpiece. Rainy Day Women, 12:35 was a big hit. Pledging My Time is a great little blues number. Visions of Johanna, which I could dissect for you line by line. Because I took a class on Dylan's lyrics back in the 80s. SDSU, really good guy named Professor Wheeler, really had a good insight into a lot of Dylan's songs, and that one especially. But I can tell you, because I'm not going to go into detail, all the men in Visions of Johanna are Bob Dylan. And just to make it easy, you could say that Johanna could be Joan Baez, but there's no indication that that's true. I Want You. I'm on side 2 now. Oh, here's a little thing. What's it called? Second Side of Mobile with the Memphis Blues again. A friend of mine in high school, Paul shout out to Paul, I've mentioned him before on this show, asked me one time what he had never heard of. He wanted to buy a Bob Dylan album, and I didn't even have it. He goes, which one should I buy? I said, get Blonde on Blonde, probably because I saw it in that Paul Gambaccini book, came out in the late 70s of the top 200 rock albums. And we were listening to it one day in his room, and that song was playing, not Queen Jane, approximately, Stuck Inside of Mobile. And it hit me that that's a great song. And I had never heard it before. So I was thinking, oh, wow, not just the obvious songs are great. These deep cuts are great too. And I immediately started buying Bob Dylan albums after that. But that was the epiphany. That was the light bulb over my head. Stuck Inside of Mobile. That was the moment I realized I got to check this guy out further. All right. So, I'm trying to memorize these songs by name, trying to bring them to my memory, but I can't. But the whole album is a masterpiece. This is my favorite, not Highway 61, but they're both impeccable 5-star albums, as is Bringing It All Back Home. Guys, you need it. You need it. All right. This is the last album in the mono box. John Wesley Harding. Actually, I'm going to give you this because it's in my hand. Then we're going to go over the Basement Tapes, which was recorded earlier. This was his only release in 1967. He had a motorcycle accident before that where, he slowed down and decided to, stop touring. Or maybe he had stopped touring before that. And just, kind of be mellow and stay with his family in New York. This album is the songs are difficult for me to comprehend, to tell you what they mean. He's really writing abstract again, but he had been doing that since 64 probably. This one has All on the Watchtower, which of course Jimi Hendrix has the definitive version, but it's also got many other songs, Dear Landlord, which were covered by other artists. This is a great favorite of a lot of people. I love the album, because I like any Dylan album from the 60s. But I gotta be honest, I like the Basement Tapes more. So let's talk about that. I'm gonna put away the mono box set. I'm not gonna discuss that again. I'm pulling out the complete Columbia box again. All right. Oh yeah. Well, see, the Basement Tapes didn't come out until 19. You know what? That's how we're going to do that. I'm not going to talk about the 1975 album yet because it's not released chronologically. We're still in the 60s. This is what I recommend. Now, this is one of the bootleg series, which is an excellent ongoing series. They come out every year. I don't know what number that they're on now. I do not have them all. I don't know if I even have half of them because, I'm not interested in every aspect of Bob's career to the extent that I would buy a huge box set like this. But this, you got to have this. This is everything that was recorded with Dylan and the Hawks in that, big pink house in New York in 1967. I mean, look at that. Now, I'm such a fan of this, guys. I read Greil Marcus's book. I love the 1975 album, which I'll get to, when I get to that. I even had bootlegs of all this material, 2. One was called A Tree with Roots before I got this, but this is the best way to hear all this material. This is just a bunch of songs that they recorded, Bob and the Hawks, who would become the band, without any intention of releasing it, these songs. But they were put out, by Albert Grossman or, Dylan's publishers so that other artists could record these songs. And they did. They started right away. Fairport Convention and the Byrds and, lots of artists were recording these songs by the end of the 60s. All right. So this is the best way to own all the material. There's so many, Quinn the Eskimo was a huge hit. This Wheels on Fire. I Shall Be Released. It goes on and on. But some of my favorite Dylan music, some of my favorite band music, and I definitely like this better than John Wesley Harding. All right, so that's that. And you know what? I'm kind of skipping around, so I need to go back. Okay. you need to see Don't Look Back. This is the Criterion Blu-ray. This is a D.A. Pennebaker documentary. Everyone has seen it. It is classic. It's a classic movie, well, in this case, a classic documentary, in the same way that, A Hard Day's Night is a classic Beatles film. I mean, not just fans of Dylan should know this, but I mean, just scholars of 60s cinema, right? So Don't Look Back. Check it out if you don't know it. Scorsese did No Direction Home. This is the bootleg series, volume 7. This is the soundtrack to his documentary. This is the Blu-ray. Another really good, way of looking at that kind of really essential mid-60s Dylan, where he was like the most enigmatic figure in music. All right, so these are like 2 companion pieces, but get the movie before you get the CDs. All right. So I guess that's it for Dylan in the movies in the 60s. I'll get this out the way since it's in my way. This is the big blue box of all of Bob Dylan's recordings in 65 and 66. It's massive, and it is a bit like going through the Stooges Complete Funhouse sessions, where it can be a bit taxing to get to this entire box. I've certainly, listened to it once, but I've never successfully listened to everything all over again. Nothing quite takes the place of these 3 albums, Bringing It All Back Home, Highway 61 Revisited, and Blonde on Blonde. But if you're, a major fan, as so many of us are, yeah, I picked this up as soon as it was released. I've never regretted it. Maybe one day I'll sell it, but probably not. But I was hoping that there would be like some major Bob Dylan songs on here I never heard before. There aren't. It's just a lot of different versions, alternate takes, stuff like that. Alternate versions of stuff that we already know. All right? So this is a bootleg series too, I think. Yeah. The Cutting Edge. Yeah, bootleg series volume 12. All right, so that's that. Well, hell, since we're talking about bootleg series, this is the first one, volumes 1 through 3, and still one of the best. This goes from 1961 to 1991. So, classic era Dylan. Lots of stuff on here. Never made it onto LPs. It's only, I want to say 3 CDs. Yeah. Totally essential. Picking which volumes of the bootleg series are essential is entirely, an exercise in subjectivity. But this was the first one, and in many ways, still one of the best. Moving on, I got this little, there were no official live Dylan albums in the 60s. This is Live at the Gaslight, 1962, when he was still a complete folkie. Interesting, if nothing else. Here's a concert from Brandeis University in 63. Again, you can freeze frame on the song titles. Still in his total acoustic phase. Here's bootleg series volume 6. This is a Halloween show, I think, from 1964. All right, so this is 2 discs. I do prefer my live Dylan to be electric, so I don't play these that much. This was a revelation when it came out. This is the bootleg series, the Royal Albert Hall concert. That's in quotations because it wasn't Royal Albert Hall, it was Manchester. This is volume 4. This was 2 discs. It was the complete, show where, he went over there with the Hawks and he was booed by the Europeans, same way he was here in the States, because they all thought he was Judas, as is so famously he was called at this show, for picking up electric instruments and not staying true to his folk roots. If you're into that, where is it? Oh, here we go. If you're into that, there's the complete 1966 live recordings It's every show that he did in Europe with the Hawks. Now, folks, it is the same show repeated every night. He's over there. The Hawks, the only difference between the Hawks and the band was that Levon Helm wasn't the drummer. It was Bobby something, Bobby Gray, I don't remember his name. But it's a lot of CDs. I did not get through this whole disc because it's literally like playing the whole box, I'm sorry. It's literally like playing the same show disc after disc. There's an acoustic show, there's an acoustic set, there's an electric set, and he plays the same songs in the same sequence night after night. No spontaneity. There's even some shows where he tells the same between songs pattern, but it's some of the most exciting live music you've ever heard. So Bob Dylan, the 1966 live recordings. It was cheap when it came out. I'm sure it's still in print. Knock yourself out. Am I caught up? Not quite yet to 1967. Also in 67, his first greatest hits album came out. It's another classic. I mean, this was the first Bob Dylan album I ever heard. In high school, friends of mine had it. It was probably their parents' album, and we used to put it on. Not a whole lot. We used to Rainy Day went into 12:35. First cut from Blonde on Blonde is also the first cut here. We used to lock our arms together and do like the can dance, just as a joke to that song. But this is an outstanding Steve Hoffman version where he, whenever Steve Hoffman and either the DCC label or the Audio Fidelity label this is Audio Fidelity, would do one of these greatest hits albums, he would painstakingly get the original master tapes for every song, so that was hard to do. And as long as I'm talking about that, he did the same thing for 1971's Bob Dylan's Greatest Hits Volume 2. This is a better listen, I think. Not only is it a double album, it covers everything through 71 with, at the time, some new cuts. And if you give both of these albums, 67 and 71, there's no overlap, So it's a real good 3 LP look at his career up until that time. Again, if you get these Audio Fidelity versions, Hoffman took the time to find the master tape of every song on here. So, and here's one more thing I can show you. This is something that somebody sent me. Bob Dylan, the 50th anniversary collection. They were, as the 50th anniversary comes up for every year, 50 years ago, the label puts out all this stuff because they're trying to save copyright laws or something. This is just a bunch of stuff, from the early 60s. There are other 50th anniversary collections too for different years. I did not buy. This is the only one that I did. And I can't even tell you what year this is because this was the first one though. I think, I remember. So anyways, all right, now we're all caught up. Okay, 68, there was no official Bob Dylan album. In 69, I'm gonna start using the Columbia box again. We had Nashville Skyline, one of his best recorded albums. It's a full-on country rock album. He had been on the Johnny Cash show that year, and these are simpler songs. Lay Lady Lay was a huge hit, but the whole album is pretty good. I don't know if it's as important as John Wesley Harding, but to me, it's every bit as much of a pleasurable listen. These songs are not risking anything. They're not asking too much in terms of your time. They're not hard to figure out. It's just a nice, album to put on like in the background or as you're driving around. And at one time, it was probably considered like a classic, although you don't really see it turning up too much on greatest albums of all time lists anymore. That would be the last album he would release, though, which was really praised for a while. Because in 1970, I'm looking around, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Okay, in 1970, Self-Portrait came out. Yeah, this is actually Bob Dylan painted that. This was another double album, like Blonde on Blonde, I hear you say. Ooh, but it's not as good. It really isn't that bad. It was much derided at the time. Greil Marcus wrote a famous review in Rolling Stone saying, what is this shit? It's got covers on here. He actually covers a Paul Simon song. There is a really good bootleg series devoted to this, and I think New Morning, which I don't have, but I have the CDRs that somebody sent me, but I do recommend it if you're interested in this 1970 period of Dylan. There's live stuff on here from I think it was the Isle of Wight in Europe. Not bad, but probably the least essential album he had made at this time, unless you consider his first album to be less important than this. Days of 49 is my daughter JC's favorite Bob Dylan song. I think it's on here, or it's on New Morning. Anyways, New Morning, I think, is the better album. 1970, perhaps stung by the criticism of the last album. He quickly assembled another one. He hadn't released 2 albums in 1 year since 65. Old picture of him on the back there. Again, these are kind of unassuming songs. He's just kind of being mellow with his family in New York. He's not writing major songs that are telling you about life or anything like that. But of course, all Bob Dylan songs tell you about life. It's a good kind of record from this period. And I recommend this. Do I like it more than Nashville Skyline? I don't know. Probably about as good without a major hit on it, though, like Lay Lady Lay. If Not For You is on here, which George Harrison did at the same time on All Things Must Pass. Okay, in 71 was the Greatest Hits Volume 2, like I showed you earlier. There was no Bob Dylan album in 1972. People were pining for him, though. If you watch my Bowie video, I mentioned on the David Bowie album Hunky Dory in 71, where he has a song for Bob Dylan where he wants Bob to come back again, and be like he was. But Bob was never going to do that, though, was he? He doesn't like to be the leader. He doesn't like to do what he's told, blah, blah, blah. In 73, he accepts a job as the songwriter to do the soundtrack for the Peckinpah film. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. It's a good movie. I'm a big Peckinpah fan. Criterion just did a Blu-ray about that. I should have pulled it out to show you. Chris Christopherson was the lead. Dylan is a minor character called Alias. The soundtrack album, I keep using the word unassuming, meaning he's not really trying to write classics here, but it does contain one. Knocking on Heaven's Door, which has been covered by everybody, Guns N' Roses. There's also like several different versions of a song called Billy. I like the album, but there's something slight about it. I like the movie, though, a lot. Also in 73, he was leaving Columbia, so they dashed out this album called Dylan, of just a bunch of stuff that he had recorded and not released. I can't recommend this as a Bob Dylan album, but it's not bad. If you're interested in Bob Dylan, pick it up. And if you get this complete Columbia albums box set, it's in there. All right. In 74, he had not toured in forever and a day. He gets back with the band and they do an album and a live album from their tour. Planet Waves went to #1. It's a pretty good record. He has the band on here. Forever Young is on here. On a night like this. These are kind of middle of the road Dylan records, this and New Morning and Self-Portrait, where they're good, but I wouldn't give this to someone to turn them on to Bob Dylan. It was very successful, though, and as was the tour. This was before the flood, And, you know, the irony was when he had toured with the band in 66, when they were the Hawks, they were booing him and, you know, calling him Judas or whatever. This is a double album. But when he came back and toured with them in 74, they were gods, you know. They were like royalty and everyone was ready for them. The world had caught up. Of course, they weren't playing as raucous as they were in the 60s either. They just did a box set, which I did not buy, of, I think, the complete shows that were recorded on that tour for the Before the Flood album. Didn't buy it because I knew it would just be one more, you know, box set that I would buy, that I would play or not. You know, either I would get through it once or not, and I'd file it away and probably wouldn't play it again. So I didn't buy it. Okay. In 75, the Basement Tapes finally came out. This is the double LP of, you know, songs that he had recorded with the Hawks or the band. I don't know if they were called the Hawks or the band in 67. There's overdubs on this, and there's some newly recorded band songs that don't even feature Bob Dylan. You can tell because Bob Dylan's not singing. Bob Dylan, I think, sang everything, or was the main singer on everything that he recorded with the Hawks in 67. Guys, this is a masterpiece. If I had to list my favorite album, 1975, it would be a toss-up between this, Blood on the Tracks, or Born to Run. All right? This is a masterpiece. And even though, you know, the purists may balk because it's got some overdubs and some new band recordings, it's a 5-star album. I wouldn't change a thing. All right? And that same year, I know I'm kind of cruising through this fast, but so be it. Oh, don't have Blood on the Tracks because it's not on here. Well, you know what? That's okay, because I'm going to show you guys this. This is another one of the bootleg series. This is volume 14. This is More Blood, More Tracks. This is all the things he recorded for that album. All right. Now, Blood on the Tracks is another masterpiece. It's as good for 1975 probably as Bringing It All Back Home and Highway 61 were 10 years earlier for 1965. Every song is fantastic. There's a cinematic quality to that album. It's kind of like his breakup album with Sarah, although does he deny that? I don't know. Bob Dylan is so hard to pin down that he can name a song Sarah and then deny that the song's about her. Anyways, if you like the album, and who doesn't, I recommend it. Blood on the Tracks. This is not the album cover, though. I think I'm realizing. Oh, you know what? I bet you I've got it right here as an SACD. There you are. I can show you guys what it looks like. That's what it looks like. That's Blood on the Tracks. That's the SACD. All right? If that ain't the best album of 1975, then it's going to be Born to Run or the Basement Tapes. Okay. Almost as good is 1976's Desire. Different sound than what's on Blood on the Tracks. Blood on the Tracks was recorded in 74, by the way. He's got, what's her name? Not Scarlett O'Hara, that's Gone with the Wind. Scarlett Rivera on violin. It's she adds really good violin to these songs. He's singing these with Emmylou Harris. Another really strong clutch of songs. I'm not crazy about Joey at the end because he was this mafioso type, but it's not a bad. It doesn't ruin the album. I just synced this with a friend of mine the other night, so it's fresh in my mind. Pretty much another 5-star album. And since 1976 was not the greatest year for LPs in that decade, hard to think of too many albums better than this. Maybe Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder, maybe Ramones, but this is way up there. All right. All right. Hard Rain, I think also came out in 76. This is another live album, probably the least impressive of his live albums thus far, but it's got some really good performances on here. Now, I probably should have told you guys about the Rolling Thunder review, which I will now as I'm looking around. No. Well, tell you what, I'll show you this. And until they do a huge box set of that tour of the Rolling Thunder review, this will do. This is 1975 live recordings. It is, I can't tell how many CDs that is, but it's really good stuff. He had a real traveling review where he had all these artists that were performing with him. Roger McGuinn definitely was one, and he was better live here than he was with the band in the previous year in '74. So I don't remember where Hard Rain comes from. If these are 76 shows, still part of the Rolling Thunder review, or if this was like a separate tour, but it's from the same era anyway. So, yep, I recommend that. All right. Okay. Here's don't believe that there was an album in 77, because Street Legal is 78, right? Now, I gotta be honest about Street Legal. This is the original LP mix. It was remixed after this, but if you get the Columbia box, they give you the original, right? Yeah, they do. I have not spent the time with this album that I perhaps should have, so I don't know these songs as well. I know Changing the Guard is on here, which I think Patti Smith does a really good version. But I do know people that really dig this record. That's because, clearly they have spent more time with it than I have, but I don't know this record I don't know this or Hard Rain that well. So can't give you my opinion with any degree of expertise. The Budokan album, which was live, where he radically gives different arrangements to his material, is another live record, just like Before the Flood, where they just released earlier this year, I don't remember, a big old box set. Actually, it was 2 years ago, because the Before the Flood was one that came out this year. A big old box set of the shows that they recorded for this tour. Again, didn't buy it because it's one of those things where I would play it or not, file it away. But if you're a fan of this era, I gotta alert you to the fact that box set exists. This album's okay. I'm not crazy about it. And in 1979, he enters his Christian phase with Slow Train Comin'. He made 3 Christian albums, hardcore, fundamentalist, born again Christian albums, as there were a lot of people like that at that time. My mother was one of them. This is my favorite one. The other 2 aren't as good. He's got Mark Knopfler on here. These, for the most part, these songs are pretty good. Gotta Serve Someone was a hit on the radio. I don't think there was a hit from the last studio album. So I'm gonna end now, but I'm gonna look around and see what I've forgotten. All right, before I give you my wrap up on Bob Dylan. Oh, I forgot. This was a bootleg series, the Rolling Thunder Review, Volume 5. So this is another release of those mid-'70s Rolling Thunder Review shows. I don't remember this one being as impressive as this one, but these are 2 official releases for you. In 1985, I know it's outside the context of this show, but since most of the material is from the 60s and 70s, Biograph was one of the first great box sets, CD box sets, vinyl box sets, covering a band's career. It was originally 5 LPs. I had a girlfriend at the time, bought it for me. Then the next year, since we were still together, for Christmas, she bought me the 3 CD version. And then this is the 3rd time I've had this box set. This is the remastered version. This is fantastic, though. This is as good as Neil Young's Decade, but it's, 5 LPs worth of stuff as opposed to 3 LPs for a decade. Lots of great material on here that was not released previously. Guys, Bob Dylan is one of those artists, like the Byrds, to pick a band much influenced by Dylan, who did not always put their best material on their albums. All right, so you need something like this to give you the full breadth of their work. But even better, but you had to get it on LP, was the Ten of Swords, which was 10 LPs. I have it on CD. These are CDRs. It does not sound good. So if you can get, if you're a vinyl guy and you can get the a vinyl copy of Ten of Swords, this blows Biograph away. And plus it includes some of the stuff that was on Biograph anyway. But I do not recommend getting CDRs of this. What would be interesting is because probably most of this stuff has been released officially now, to make your own version of Ten of Swords using officially released stuff, but not everything on here has had an official release, so you got to keep that in mind. And the last thing, because I skipped over it, his Christian phase from 79 through 81 or so, he toured extensively during those years, and the shows were good. This is Trouble No More, which is Bootleg Series Volume 13. This is real good. In fact, I would say this is every bit, if not better, than just getting the 3 studio Christian albums. He played well, and he was kind of evangelical at the time with on these tours, and he was a believer for better or worse. I think I've about covered the 60s and the 70s. In 1978, way pre-Biograph, there was Masterpieces, which came out, which was, I want to say it was 3 LPs. Anyways, this is the 3 CDs. It's no Biograph, but it's interesting. And that's it. Looking around, I think I've done everything. So, Bob Dylan. Wow, this is a long video. This is my longest video, I think, since the Beach Boys. Now you can see why I only did the 60s and the 70s. There is no more important songwriter, and I'm not going to put the caveat in American songwriter. There's no more important songwriter of the 20th century. People who don't like Dylan, they don't get Dylan. They've never taken the time to look at those songs, to look at what the words mean. They don't get past the fact that they don't like his voice, But the voice is not the point of Robert Zimmerman. Neither is his looks. He was there to show you don't have to have a conventionally pretty voice or be conventionally pretty to have something to say. All right? So he's not going to come to you. You got to come to him. They don't play Bob Dylan too much on the radio. You have to have read about him. You have to have been told about him. And if you just don't dig Bob Dylan, which so many people don't, I get it. I get it the way that I get it when people tell me that they don't like the Grateful Dead or they don't like Elvis or, whoever. I get it. It's like, I'm not here to proselytize and convince you that he's the man. I'm just telling you that, he is. All right. Matt Wilson, sign it off.